Joining me now is a three-time NBA All-Star, the number 2 pick in the 1990 draft, the co-rookie of the year in 2000, the forgotten man in the 2000 NBA dunk contest, the franchise. Steve Francis is joining me. Steve, thank you for taking time out of your morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Up in Toronto, it's a little cold, but I can get used to it.
A little bit different than the Houston weather, right?
Absolutely.
Now, Steve, jumping right into it, what made you want to be a part of this project?
I think it was a lot of forgotten words that I wasn't able to discuss back then. Of course, the media controls the narrative from the beginning. When you join the NBA, but I was willing to wait it out. I met Kat, who's a great person, a great producer, who was on a mission to find out what she can find out about, you know, um, Vancouver. There she is in the background. There she is in the background. But
That's
um, yeah, it was just something that I thought at this time of my life, with two kids, they could see it from my point of view, and I think it's a good, interesting project.
nice. Now, throughout this whole process, did you learn anything about Vancouver? Did you learn it? What did you learn? What were your biggest learning moments from the duration of throughout this duration of the process?
This is probably the best question. I think that the fans really love basketball.
Mhm.
I think Toronto, of course, they stuck with it when it started in '95, but being in Vancouver for the period of time that I was, and even reading up on things that happened, post the move to Memphis, the fans were they weren't aware of what was going on behind the scenes. So I think this movie proves a lot to why Vancouver could probably be another place for basketball to come.
Absolutely. Now, there's this perception amongst NBA circles that players don't want to play in Canada, even after the Raptors won the title. Do you think that perception is still there? And if so, why?
In some parts, probably, Canada, of course, as we know, is definitely a hockey and baseball, dominated sport country. But I think over the past the past 2 decades, basketball has grown a lot in Canada. Um, I don't think that it was an unfortunate situation after the championship that the MVP wanted to go home, but I don't think people are running away from Toronto.
Absolutely. Now, you weren't the first person to say no to going to a place that you were originally drafted to. But why do you think that your decision had such a impact on a franchise's future?
At that time, the new millennium was right there. A lot of teams were trying to rebound from Michael Jordan retiring. Chicago went with Elton Brand to try to rebuild with the Bulls. And Vancouver was an enigma team right there. They wasn't sure. A lot of people wasn't sure, as you'll see in the movie, what was going on behind the scene. I don't want to tell everything, but I think the movie says a lot about the insecurity of a lot of the fans.
Absolutely. Now, when you came back to Vancouver, it was a very hostile environment. Can you kind of describe what it was like coming back into Vancouver, with all the booze and the fans and stuff like that? Can you explain that atmosphere and what it was like? Because you actually had a good game. I saw the clips of you throwing off the backboard and all of that. So you definitely balled out in Vancouver.
It wasn't just a normal game. I knew it was going to be hostile. Even the players were on both sides were amped up. My guys in the Houston locker room understood how much that meant to me to have a good game because they were able to read a lot of the things that were being written about me, and they were able to meet me as a person. So they were rubbed the wrong way, so they wanted me to go out there and play a good game. But the booze and all those things, like I said, Canada is a hockey place, so those things do go on in hockey. So it was something I had to be prepared for.
Absolutely. Now, after going through this whole process and understanding the truth of Vancouver and seeing the fans and how passionate they are, do you believe that Vancouver deserves another shot at the NBA?
I think with the right backing, the right ownership, and of course, PR is very important. I know that the fan support is there.
Mhm.
I see that a lot of people, like I said, Canada has a lot of good basketball players in the NBA, as we see, and who else to say but Steve Nash, who's a Canadian. So you never know.
Perfect. Now, I want to talk about your hoops career because you did have a hoops career, a great one, actually. And a lot of people might not remember, a lot of basketball fans might not remember, but you were kind of like Ja Morant, Russell Westbrook before Ja Morant and Russell Westbrook, that explosive point guard that can play above the rim. Case in point, you finished runner-up to Vince Carter in the 2000 dunk contest, what many consider top 2 moment in Canadian basketball history. What was it like competing against Vince and T-Mac in that iconic dunk contest?
It was great, being an underdog, probably the shortest guy in the dunk contest, a rookie, of course. So I looked to the challenge, to all those guys, not only Vince and T-Mac and, Ricky Davis, Grant Hill, Jerry Stack. I was like, all those guys were there. So I was just happy to be on the floor with those guys that I watched playing.
Now, you did have some really underrated dunks there. I think your first dunk, you kind of got snubbed. You should have got a much higher score from the judges. I definitely think you should have got a 50 on that one because you had like a 40-inch vert on that one. Now, you also played in an era where it was my favorite era of the NBA, where you're going up against guys like Kobe, Allen Iverson, Shaq, all these legends of the game. Who is the one guy, though, that you loved going up against on a nightly basis?
In the Western Conference, every night, like I just named one, Steve Nash, you had Gary Payton, you had Jason Williams. So every point guard, every night was always a challenge for me. So I just wanted to see, who was going to bring the best out of me every single night.
Was Gary Payton the best trash talker you ever had to deal with?
Kevin Garnett.
Kevin Garnett, okay, I can see that.
I played against him longer. But I also played in 3 All-Star games with him. So, he's very talented, and I love playing with him.
Absolutely. Now, going to today's NBA, who is one player in today's game that really reminds you of yourself?
Like you were naming a couple players earlier, man. I just think that the basketball game has evolved. You can look at Shea Alexander down in Oklahoma City. You can look at Morant. You can look at Lillard. You can look at all these guys who are aggressive with the basketball, going to the basket, and they're able to shoot, at any time that they want. So if I was able to play in this era, I'd love to pull up at any time. But these guys are going out there putting that basketball in the hole.
Well, Steve, I want to thank you for joining me. Before you go, just let the fans know what you're up to nowadays.
Well, now I have 2 kids, of course, being a dad. I have a 17-year-old daughter who's on her way to college, and a 15-year-old son, doing that and, investing in real estate, and still have my foundation. You can look us up, SteveFranchiseFoundation.com.
Perfect. I want to thank you, Steve, for joining me this morning, taking time out of your busy schedule. Enjoy your weekend in Toronto, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.